please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We started the meeting in a few minutes because we got word that the YouTube live stream wasn't working. So apologies to those out there when they finally do get to watch the meeting, that it didn't start immediately, but hopefully we'll get that rectified as we get started. Shelby, is there any correspondence?
Yes, we have one email received from Helene Starzy that she wanted me to read into the record for you guys. She wrote, "Good morning, Reed and all town board members. The owner of 27 West Neck Road and their tenant has had more than enough time after your 12/8/25 letter stating zoning code violations of noncompliance. They have not removed any of their new entities of the above mentioned property, including but not limited to tables, pallets, deer fencing, and products to be sold. It's been more than 30 days since they pulled their long overdue application. Please have this addressed immediately. Thank you, Helene Starzy."
And that has gone to Reed, so it is with the building department for code enforcement. Put that in your hands along with Reed. Liz, do you want to get us started with resolutions?
Yes. Whereas Christopher Shelmer and Danielle Ferreira, 13 Dickerson Drive, have petitioned the town of Shelter Island to amend their existing wetlands permit to allow for the demolition of the existing walls to be rebuilt in the same place as per plan submitted by Jeffrey Butler dated November 17th, 2025. Now, therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to section 129-7 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, a public hearing will be held on Monday, February 23rd, 2026 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter, prevailing time, in the Shelter Island Town Hall, 38 North Ferry Road, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested persons to be heard in favor or in opposition to the proposed application. So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Whereas Gordon Thompson III Revocable Trust, 8C Pheasant Lane, has petitioned the town of Shelter Island for a permit to remove and dispose of 101 feet of face bulkhead and 11 feet of west return and construct a new 101 foot of face bulkhead with an 11 foot of west return in place and in kind, and to construct 6 foot eastern return for a total of 118 feet of bulkhead, as per plan submitted by KS Costello Marine Contracting Corp. Dated June 12, 2025, and approved by the New York State DEC on July 17, 2025. And whereas on October 20th, 2025, December 1st, 2025, and December 22nd, 2025, a public hearing was held on the subject of application where public comments were received and taken under consideration. And whereas the subject application was referred to the Waterways Management Advisory Committee and the report was taken into consideration. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to NYC RR 617.5C1, C2, and C9, this application is deemed a type 2 action. Reasons supporting this determination: the proposed construction consists of the replacement of 101 feet of bulkhead, 11 feet of west return, is a replacement to an existing structure, and the addition of 6 feet eastern return is not a substantial change to the existing structure, and therefore does not require coordination with other involved agencies. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized to issue a permit for the aforementioned construction as per specifications filed after said applicant pursuant to section 53-9 of the town code of the town of Shelter Island has filed with the town clerk a certificate that the owner has at least $300,000 of liability insurance on the location and operations covered by said permit. Company of the contractor, a copy of the contractor's current home improvement contractor's license, and a certificate from the contractor performing the operations covered by said permit, that said contractor has an owner's contractor's policy issued in favor of the town of Shelter Island for the liability limits of at least $500,000, covering operation of the contractor pursuant to said permit, and be it further resolved that said operation shall be completed within 2 years from the date of issuance of this permit. Said permit is subject to the recommended limitations of any requirements that may be necessary under the New York State DEC, the Army Corps of Engineers, and any other agencies having jurisdiction. So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Whereas the term of Matthew Williamson as a member of the Waterways Management Advisory Committee will expire on February 1st, 2026, and whereas Mr. Williamson has expressed willingness to continue to serve in said capacity, now therefore be it resolved that Mr. Williamson is hereby reappointed to serve as member of the Waterways Management Advisory Committee for a term to expire on February 1st, 2029, And be it further resolved that Mr. Williamson is hereby designated and appointed as chairman of the Waterways Management Advisory Committee, and that his term as chairman shall run coterminously with his term of appointment to the committee. So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Yes. Do we want the chairmanship to run with his full appointment, or should that be an annual appointment? We changed the, it used to be something that was done annually, and back in, was it July, I think, or April? Last year, we changed it to run for the whole term. It was the only committee that we Okay. had that That the wasn't. chairman wasn't appointed for their full term.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right. There's no further discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Resolution 2026-blank. Whereas the term of William Garrity as a member of the Waterways Management Advisory Committee will expire on February 1, 2026, and whereas Mr. Garrity has expressed willingness to continue to serve in said capacity, now therefore be it resolved that Mr. Garrity is hereby reappointed to serve as member of the Waterways Management Advisory Committee for a term to expire on February 1, 2029. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas pursuant to Section 31H of the Public Officers Law, a town officer must sign and file a constitutional oath of office within 30 days after the term of office begins. And whereas Dan Halstead was appointed to serve as a member of the West Water District Board of Directors for a term to expire on April 25, 2028. And whereas Peter McCracken was reappointed to serve as a member of the chair of the Emergency Medical Services Advisory Board for a term to expire December 31st, 2028. And whereas Edward Cotter was appointed to serve as a volunteer for the Recreation Department. And whereas Tom Sheehan was appointed to serve as a volunteer for the Recreation Department. And whereas the above aforementioned persons have not yet signed and filed said constitutional oath of office. And whereas the town board desires to have the aforementioned persons serve the town of Shelter Island in their designated capacities. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby appoints the aforesaid persons to their designated positions. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Resolved that the following title changes are hereby approved retroactive to January 10th, 2026. Anthony Ryder from heavy equipment operator to construction equipment operator, and Ray Sandwald from laborer to automotive equipment operator. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Be resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $365 from the A1335.491 Assessor Support Contracts to Apex Software, P.O. Box 100145, San Antonio, Texas 78201, for the Apex sketching software renewal for the contract term of February 1st, 2026 to February 1st of 2027. So moved. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $380.16 from the A3120.491 Police Department contracts to Motorola Solutions, Inc., 13108 Collection Center, Chicago, Illinois, 60693 for the contract term of December 9th, 2025 to December 8th, 2026 for the annual software car detection mobile license for police vehicles. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $4,825 from the A8160.484 landfill office and miscellaneous account to Creative Information Systems, Inc., P.O. Box 51115, Newark, New Jersey 07101, for the SMS Turbo software annual support and maintenance for a contract term of January 1, 2026 to December 31, 2026. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $1,033.19 from the A1330.476 tax receiver computer software to Edmunds GovTech 301 Tilton Road, Northfield, New Jersey, 08225 for iTax web portal maintenance for the contract term of 12/1/2026 to 1/31/2027. So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $3,885 from the A7020.484 Recreation Department Office and Miscellaneous to Recdust LLC, PO Box 999, Williamson, Vermont 05495, to the annual software subscription for the contract term of 1/1/2026 to 12/31/2026. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $8,702.56 from the A3120.491 Police Department contracts to Lexipol, PO Box 676232, Dallas, Texas 75267-6232 for the annual law enforcement procedures manuals and daily training bulletins for the contract term of January 1st, 2026 to December 31st of 2026. So moved. Second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Whereas the town of Shelter Island has received a donation from Mr. Greg James, There and Here LLC 2, to be used in support of the Deer and Tick Committee in the amount of $2,500, and whereas receipt of these funds was unknown at budget time, now therefore be it resolved that the following 2026 budget revision is hereby approved. $2,500 increase to the A2770 miscellaneous donations revenue account to be funded by said donation check, and a $2,500 increase to the A3510.498 Deer Reduction Management Expense Account. And be it further resolved that the Town Board and the Deer and Tick Committee extend their sincere gratitude to Mr. Greg James for his generous contribution. So moved.
Second,
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
resolved that the following 2026 budget transfers are hereby approved. $3,331.25 from A1220.103 Senior Account Clerk Longevity to A1010.496 Town Board Association of Towns to reflect a staff change to an employee not eligible for longevity, and therefore the funds will be used to send our town board members to Association of Towns training. And $1,134.26 from A1220.101 Senior Account Clerk to A1010.496 Town Board Association of Towns to reflect a staff change and use of funds to send town board members to Association of Towns training. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Resolved that the following 2025 budget transfers are hereby approved. $50 from the A1330.200 tax receiver equipment to A1330.484 tax receiver office and miscellaneous to transfer unused funds for equipment to office supplies. And $19,000 from the A3120.100 PS Police Personal Services to the A3120.1000T to cover department overtime that is not East End Drug Task Force related. And $1,000 from the A1221.491 Human Resources Service Contracts to the A1221.484 Human Resources Office and miscellaneous to transfer unused funds for contracts to office supplies. And $200 from the A1010.200 Town Board equipment to the A1010.495 Town Board print and advertising, transfer unused funds for equipment to cover public notice advertising, and $160 from the A1010.492 Town Board school travel and mileage to the A1010.484 Town Board office and miscellaneous to transfer unused funds to office supplies. And $180 from the A110.496 Justice Court Association of Towns to the A110.499 Justice Court stenographer to transfer unused funds for stenographer extra hours, and $3,000 from the A1220.412 supervisor ADP to the A1010.497 town board professional services, transfer unused funds to additional legal counsel, and $550 from the A1220.200 supervisor equipment to the A1220.484 supervisor office and miscellaneous to transfer unused funds for equipment to office supplies. So moved.
Second,
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
resolved that the 2025 general fund claims numbered 2363 through 2467 in the amount of $61,865.78, and the 2025 highway fund claims numbered 290 through 291 in the amount of $518 are hereby approved for payment as audited, and the supervisor and/or any town board member is hereby authorized and directed to sign the approval for payment of the same. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Resolved that the 2026 general funds claim number 01 through 32 in the amount of $15,764.94, and the 2026 highway fund claim number 1 in the amount of $500 are hereby approved for payment as audited, and the supervisor and/or any town board member is hereby authorized and directed to sign the approval for payment of the same. So moved. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, we will adjourn the regular part of our meeting and open our first public hearing. And our first public hearing is O'Sullivan Wetlands Permit, and it is continuation from 2025. And we have here on behalf of the applicant, Matt Sherman. Yes. Matt, the last time we actually heard this was July 21st, I believe. So if you would indulge the board and the rest of the audience to just go into a little bit more detail than you normally would for continuation.
Just I was planning on kind of not going into excruciating detail from the beginning, but for the members who weren't here before and or further, just
Thank you.
and for my own purposes, just to review. If I could share my screen, go through our presentation that we've got. Okay. As you mentioned, this is from the summer. What this project is there's an existing single-family dwelling at 74 Peconic Avenue. It's borders on Shelter Island Sound. The sound is, we'll say, to the south. It's a little bit off center, but the sound is to the south. Peconic Avenue is to the north. What's on your screen right now is the existing survey, which shows it's a small ranch house on a small lot. So the lot itself is 100 feet wide, and it's about 200 to 215 feet from the road to the bulkhead. So 2/3 of the property is upland, about 1/3 of the property is seaward of the bulkhead. This was the original plan that we had submitted to the board. It required a approval from the town board for a wetlands permit, and it also required an approval from the ZBA for front yard and side yard setbacks. The property has 2 front yards, one along Peconic Avenue, and then also there's an extension of North Silver Beach Road, which runs down along the side of the property. So you've got those 2 front yards, both with 40-foot setbacks. On the, I'll call it the left-hand side, opposite North Silver Beach Road, it's a side yard setback of 25 feet for the main house and 20 feet for any type of accessory buildings with living space or decks, patios, things like that. Mechanical equipment would have to comply with the 25-foot setback. When we first submitted the application, we were redoing the full first floor. First floor deck stays, most of the first floor walls stay, but some of the windows and doors were getting replaced. The interior of the house was getting a complete renovation, complete makeover, and we were putting a second floor on about 2/3 of the house. We had asked for an approval to put a second floor deck on that far western side where that neighboring property is, opposite North Silver Beach Road. We had also asked to put a swimming pool in the front yard. When we first came to the town board for the wetlands permit, we kind of went over this fairly quickly, and then it was sent to the ZBA for review and discussion on their part. And the town board wanted the ZBA to review and approve or modify as they felt fit before it came back to the town board. We've gone through that process, we received the ZBA approval, and then that's what brings us back to the town board now. As part of the ZBA approval, that second floor deck that I had talked about walks out from that new second floor addition, that was removed from the ZBA's approval. So that's no longer part of the application. The owners, the property owners, also removed the swimming pool from the application on their own. There was some concern about the ZBA about having the swimming pool right in the front yard. They felt that that just wasn't an appropriate place for the pool. So the property owners decided to abide by that and pull the pool out of the application. One of the other things that we had done was right here on that northwest corner of the house, we were proposing HVAC equipment. At that time, it was HVAC and pool equipment, so all the mechanical equipment up there on that side. It would have complied with town code, being that it was quiet enough to meet the decibel exemption. However, the neighbors on that side, it's a vacant piece of property, but they use it, they sit out there, they enjoy the area from that piece of property. They had concerns about the equipment being there, so we've moved it to the opposite side, which I'll show you in just a second. So that's another thing that changed from the original application. And then another small thing that changed was we had a outdoor shower in that southeast corner of the house within the vegetated buffer. It's not enclosed, it's just basically a shower head on the wall for rinsing off when you're coming back from the beach or something like that. So that was originally down in that southeast corner. We've moved it up to the northeast corner of the house so that it's outside of the vegetative buffer, but it's within the adjacent regulated area, so it still is part of the wetlands review.
Is there a dry well associated with that?
Yeah, and I'll show you that in just a second too, yep. Actually, you can see it on this drawing, those two dry wells that are down there in that southeast corner. The roof runs into that as well as that outdoor shower. One of the things that was brought up from the CAC's review was they didn't like those dry wells in that location. We don't really like them in that location either, however, we've got nowhere else to put them, and I'll show you why in just a second. Excuse me, so this is the new plan. And you can see it's not a whole heck of a lot different than the old plan, so old plan, new plan. There we go. So it takes that roof deck out of there. It takes a swimming pool off, it moves the HVAC equipment, and it moves the outdoor shower. What we've also done is one of the things that, I don't know if it was the planning board or the CAC, they were a little upset that the existing site plan was straight up and down instead of on an angle like the others, so I've modified it to make sure that that was all okay. So we've got the stormwater drainage here as well. So the stormwater control for the different sections of the roof. This one was designed for let me see, I think we did a 4-inch rainfall, I believe, on this one. Yes, we designed for a 4-inch rainfall. Town code requires a 2-inch design, so we've made it more significant and pushed it to a 4-inch design. And I'll go into this stuff in a little bit more detail here in just a second as well. This is the health department approval. We had to get the ZBA approval first. Once we got that, we then submitted to the health department and it got their final approval. This did require a variance from the health department because their regulations are, you need to have 150 feet from a supply well to any type of sanitary structure. We can't do it, there's just not enough room. So we were able to get a variance because we were making the site significantly better by getting rid of an old septic system, putting in an IA septic, and putting in stormwater control. We've got a underground propane tank, buried propane tank, which is out by the road, so getting that far enough away from the supply well. When I said a second ago about those two dry wells on the water side of the house, that's why they're on the water side of the house, is you got the well right here, and that well's got to be in that location to get the minimum distance we need from all the neighboring septic systems. And then we've got to keep our dry wells at least 50 feet away from that supply well. So it's a tight puzzle that we've got to play with here. And then we're balancing the health department requirements with the town requirements at both the wetlands end and the ZBA end. All right, so this is kind of a simplified version of the site plan. Excuse me, we've got 414 square feet of new deck on the water side of the building. There is currently 414 square feet of deck on the water side of the building. It goes a little bit closer to the bulkhead than what we're proposing. So we're asking to be able to reconfigure that same square footage of deck because there really is very little space on this site. So we're trying to maximize what we can while also getting as far from the wetlands as we reasonably can. Those are the two dry wells right down there for the roof runoff and the outdoor shower. This is the HVAC equipment right on that corner, the supply well. This is the septic system for the new IA system. The existing cesspool is just a little bit over the seaward of the 100-foot setback. Most of it is landward of the 100-foot setback. We're pulling all of our leaching landward of the 100-foot setback. The new second floor, 122 square feet of it. There's a split of it. Some of it's within the vegetative buffer, some of it's within the adjacent regulated area. It's all over top of the existing first floor, so there's no new footprint. We're not encroaching on the wetlands or anything to that effect. The parking area has moved from the side of the house, coming off of North Silver Beach Road, within the vegetative buffer, and we've pulled it completely outside of the regulated area, so it's up here in this northeast corner. So if you remember, the driveway came down North Silver Beach and then turned in. This area here where it says 386 square feet, that's first floor. In that area currently is the garage. So that's, and I'll show you in just a second, that's getting transferred over to living space. So we're getting a garage and a driveway out of the regulated area, out of the vegetative buffer, where the town doesn't want any of that to be. Question that had come up at the planning board was FEMA and how do the FEMA zones relate to this project. So this is the overall map for this portion of Shelter Island. Zoomed in, you've got Peconic Avenue, North Silver Beach Road. So this right here is our property. Now I've got a zoomed up version on this in just a second. This aqua blue dotted area, that is AE, so that's a flood zone. You've got an AO flood zone. The black dots are X zones, and everything with no dots is outside of the flood zone. So you can see here, you can clearly see the house, and you can see the boundaries of the FEMA map. So the house is completely outside of the flood zone, so there is no implication of FEMA requirements on this project. Okay, here's the floor plans, starting out with the basement. Right now, there is, right in the middle of the building, there's a 6 to 6.5 foot deep mechanical room basement, unfinished space. There's an entrance, a Bilco entrance from the outside coming down right here. And then this area here, I don't know if you can see it on your screens, but there's a red dotted line which shows where the existing mechanical area stops. And then the area to the right is a crawl space with 1.5 to 2 feet between the dirt floor and the structure of the house. That area is going to be excavated out and turned into a full basement. That's like a family room with a laundry room in the basement. There's a small area of the existing basement that will have to get dug down a little bit, and then the area of that crawl space that will have to get dug down. We're leaving a shelf, as it says on the drawing, along the outer edges of that so that we don't have to worry about risking undermining the foundation that's along the outside of the building. So we just pull it in a few feet and go down there so that the complete outside of the building, everything stays the same. This is the first floor. This area over here where it's the living room, that right now is what's the garage. So that goes from being a garage into a living room. There's some outside storage there. We also have 2 bedrooms and a full bathroom on the first floor, as well as your other typical residential amenities like full kitchen, dining room, living room. On the second floor, we've got 2 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms. So you end up having a, let's see, back. So you end up having 2 bedrooms on the first floor and 2 bedrooms on the second floor. So basically it's going from a 3-bedroom house to a 4-bedroom house. On this drawing, these are from the first go around. The only thing that changes is this is no longer a roof deck. That is just roof. So the elevations all stay the same. You've got, in this case, it changes the, that's not a roof deck, but the elevation stays the same. So on the 1-story area, the area of the roof actually gets, the height of the roof actually gets a little bit lower because it's a single pitch going up as opposed to a gabled end. It's basically the same. It's a little bit lower, but not by much, not enough to make much of a difference. On the second floor, the elevation goes from about 13.6 to just over 23 feet. So on a house like this, if you've got a pitch on the roof that's anything more than just a flat pitch, you really have a height limit of 35 feet. If it's a flat roof, you've got a height limit of 25 feet. Either way, we're below that. So as far as the height is concerned, and this was something that the ZBA had looked at, the roof is at a below code limit for the roof. This is looking at it from either of the side elevations. A couple of renderings just to kind of, I know it's a little bit hard to get a feel for it looking at those line drawings. There's just a couple of renderings showing what the house would end up looking like. And then here's some, I don't know if you had a chance to get out there to look at the house, but this is what it looks like now. This is the waterside deck. That railing is no longer on the deck, but the deck is still there. This is the bulkhead. The bulkhead went in 2012 timeframe. During one of the recent storms, there was shown some signs that some maintenance needs to be done on the bulkhead, but it's just routine maintenance. Let's see, this is looking over at that neighbor's property, that vacant property where they have a fire pit set up out there. And this is across their property at the other neighbor on the other side. And then looking from that neighbor, this house here, looking back across the vacant property to the applicant's property. So the second floor would be over in this area here. Let's see. So as far as the presentation, that is kind of regroups where we were at initially and what got us to where we are now. I know that the planning board and the CAC both had comments on the application. The only one I really want to focus on, I think obvious reasons, the planning board, they went through a very extensive memo. Who's it? David Kriegel, Greg Cranford, and Julia Weisenberg all went to the site. And they basically ended up their comments by saying that the application is an exemplar of modesty, staying with the building envelope of the pre-existing structures and the wetlands alongside improved mitigation efforts. So they are they're suggesting that the town board approve the application as submitted. And that was as originally submitted, with the deck and with the swimming pool. Now that those things have been taken out, it's even more so in harmony with that comment. So we really just wanted the board to focus on a couple of quick things. We're getting rid of an antiquated septic system, replacing it with an IA system. The existing system is, in part, less than 100 feet from the wetlands boundary. That's a no-brainer, that's a great idea. Getting rid of the parking and the driveway within the regulated area. Also, something the town does not want to have happen, so that's a great idea. That's really good on the compliance with zoning, with the wetlands code. Putting in stormwater control, obviously a good improvement. Modifications to the existing building, bringing it up to current energy and safety standards, obviously a good improvement. Relatively small impact and increase from the project itself on the site. Like I said, we were going from 3 bedrooms to 4 bedrooms. The existing mechanical area in the basement is 470 square feet. The existing first floor is 1,214 square feet. As were proposed, the basement is going up by 210 square feet, so from 470 to 680. And then the first and second floors, first floor goes from 1,214 to 1,550. And then the second floor adds another 945 square feet onto that. So you're looking at, what's that, 25, about 3,100 square feet total, including the basement, is what your square footage area would be for this house. So not a large house by any means, keeping in harmony with the other properties around it, certainly smaller than the house that's on the other side of that vacant lot and the other houses in the area. So it's, they're doing as much as they can with as little as they can and trying to keep it in harmony with the overall area and with the wetlands code. One thing that Teresa Mason had brought up was the increase of the vegetative buffer. She had asked for a 30-foot increase to that vegetative buffer. Right now, it's at somewhere around 20 feet. And then we were going to bring native vegetation up the sides of the property. We would like to keep it at that 20 feet simply because it's so tight between the bulkhead and the house that, let's back it up a little bit here, that we end up having really no or very little yard. It's just at 40 feet to that deck, 50 feet to that deck. So if we have a 30-foot buffer, that leaves 20 feet a yard. We would like the board to consider a 20-foot buffer there rather than a 30-foot buffer so that they could just get a little bit more yard in that area. Other than that, if you've got questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer it. The property owners are here as well as the architect, so if there's anything I can't answer, they may be able to answer as well.
I'll go to Teresa Mason first.
Hi, good evening. How are you today? Teresa Mason on behalf of the town. I have listened to Mr. Sherman's presentation. He did send me a copy of the site plan. My recommendations are materially unchanged, but in light of his current presentation, the expansion of the living floor area gives me some pause. We've had recent incidences where a second-story addition was being built and the walls came down on the first floor. And so when you're coupling a second-story addition and foundation excavation, I have some pause for concern. So I would recommend that at minimum, the walls on the first floor be opened up a bit and see if they are going to support a second floor addition. I also recommend that you get a construction protocol on how they're going to excavate that new foundation without demolition of the existing dwelling. And then because it's going from about an 1,100 square foot, 1,200 square foot house to a 3,100 square foot house, inclusive of the finished basement, I am strongly recommending the 30-foot buffer. That is more than doubling the size of the home. So it is not unreasonable to ask for a buffer that still gives them 20 feet of recreation area on the seaward side, and then they have the additional area on the landward side of the home for other activities. So I am strongly recommending the 30-foot buffer, and I am also recommending you get some additional information on how the proposed additions and foundation work will be done without demolishing of the existing home. Particularly, again, since they are more than doubling the home size and they are having to excavate the foundation. We want to make sure that there's no, accidental demolition of the home without getting some additional information.
Thank you, Teresa. Does the town board have questions?
I have a couple. Actually, thank you, Teresa, because those are some of the questions I had. So is the plan, I was at the site, and because if you go to the western side of the basement, where the crawl space is the original plan to excavate that by hand? Because you can't really get machines in there to do it.
What you would typically do is ramp down from the roadside. So you would go underneath it, and a lot of it would be by hand, some of it would be by small skid steer. You're certainly not getting any large equipment down underneath it.
Okay. Another question was answered by Teresa. No, go ahead, anyone else? Question?
And how deep is the basement now? What's the clearance?
There's a couple of different sections. The main area of the basement is 6'4", give or take.
I stood up there. Yeah.
Did you hit your head?
No.
No, okay. So it's slightly taller than Ben. There at the crawl space.
Ben's a short.
2 feet. Yeah, you're talking to me? So the, 6 feet, 6'4" inch. To have a biddable space in a basement, state code is you gotta have a 7-foot clearance. And then you can have a beam that comes down another 8 inches, so the beam can come down to 6'4". But if you've got any kind of living space in the basement, you gotta have 7 feet. So that's what on that one basement drawing, you'll see there's a couple set of stairs going down from the existing basement level to the proposed basement level. So it would go from that 6'4" level down to a 7-foot or more. We'd like to get deeper. It just depends on what groundwater will let us do. We've got to stay 2 feet above groundwater. So if that only lets us go to 7 feet, that lets us go to 7 feet. If it lets us go to 7 feet 6, then great. Then we got a little bit of wiggle room.
I have an issue with excavating the basement, as you probably can
Yeah, I
well
understand.
imagine. In the wetlands area, this is a non-conforming lot. What is this? It's not even a half acre,
Yeah.
really, that they have. And they want 3 levels of living area. I think it's too much. And particularly with the last 2 years, all I've heard about is saltwater intrusion on Peconic Avenue. So why are we excavating further, to go down further? I think it undermines what we want to do, what we want to accomplish.
I don't
I think
understand
it's a negative.
I don't understand how the basement affects saltwater intrusion, especially if you're
As the
not.
tide rises, it puts pressure on the freshwater saltwater interface, right?
It has nothing to do with the basement whatsoever. Nothing. I'd love to agree with you. But I just can't.
But the level of groundwater is, what is it now?
The level of groundwater in that area is about 2 feet, give or take. Let me see if I got it on my drawing here. And we would have to stay above it. And, groundwater rise, I'm working on a couple of other projects on the island right now where we're specifically studying forecasted sea level rise and trying to put together 50, 75, 100-year plans looking forward. Even the most draconian or stringent or cynical models for ground level or for sea level rise don't have it rising a foot in the next 100 years. So to think that groundwater is going to rise more than 2 feet in a way that's going to affect the saltwater interface in 100 years, it's just not borne out by science, by anything that we know. I understand the concern. I understand why you may not want more living space on a given property, being that it's just at a half an acre when it should be a 1 acre property. I do think it's important to keep into focus that this application, and they weren't just asking for things just to have sacrificial lambs to throw off. The second floor deck, they really wanted. The swimming pool, they really wanted.
I'm sure.
Those things were taken out.
Sure.
So the extra living space that they're trying to get has basically been drawn down and limited to the converted garage and the converted basement. So it's larger than the existing house, yes. You're going from a very small house to a moderate house. I'm not gonna say it's small, it's 3,000 square feet. That's not a small house. It's also not a large house. It's also not unusual for the area. So in
Less than half an acre,
yeah.
substantially less, really. It's not,
Yes.
quite a bit less than a half.
Absolutely, and I fully acknowledge that, yeah.
You know, it's a lot of house for the size lot that's there. I guess what compounds the issue for me is hearing Teresa Mason's apprehension about the structure itself. I mean, I don't know how to handle the basement. I'm not a big fan of creating that at all by any means.
Teresa put her hand up, so she may have an answer.
Yeah, okay.
Teresa?
Just with respect to the saltwater intrusion, there are actually two separate things. Saltwater intrusion is more of a concern with respect to drinking water. But what your concern was the hydrostatic pressure of the groundwater as it presses against the foundation. That's usually what the concern is there. I did a quick math. It is a 4-foot separation from, if they do a 7-foot basement, it's a 4-foot separation to the current groundwater levels to the basement floor, and figure another 1.5 feet of footing, so that's about 2.5 feet. So they do technically not have that much of concern with respect to potential flooding and hydrostatic pressure. However, if we have a large storm like Hurricane Sandy, it could be an issue. But you know, Hurricane Sandy was a very large storm in an unexpected track. But with respect to the foundation and the separation to groundwater and the hydrostatic pressure, they should be okay there. Groundwater intrusion, saltwater intrusion is more of a drinking water concern. But again, I understand your concerns. I share them with regard to the excavation of the foundation, but more so in how it relates to the preservation of the existing structure without demolition or shoring up. And if, you know, how that would be completed and making sure we have proper documentation and maybe even running it by the town's engineer to make sure that it's consistent with construction policies, just to make sure that that existing dwelling is preserved, because if that dwelling comes down, you know, that's an opportunity then to try and maximize setbacks and maximize the benefits to the wetlands. So my concern is how we preserve the existing structure without demolishing it while doing all these additional things to the property, such as the second story addition and the foundation excavation.
And I appreciate that, and we can certainly put together a construction protocol which addresses that and give it to Reed and give it to Joe, you know, give it to the building department and the town engineer and get their sign off on it if they're okay with it. Another thing, and I don't want to get academic about it, but another part of it is the basement work doesn't require a wetlands permit. That doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means it's not part of the jurisdiction of the wetlands permit. We actually double checked with the building department to make sure that that understanding was correct and had that confirmed, that we may dislike it. It doesn't require a wetlands permit. So they could do nothing as far as anything else, go to the building department and get a building permit to put a basement underneath this house. And they wouldn't have to come to the town for anything other than a building permit. So the fact that it's wrapped into the ZBA and it's wrapped into the wetlands, I think is fantastic, because then it gives a chance, let's do some additional mitigation. Let's do a construction protocol to make sure that something unexpected doesn't happen. By all means, it's, let's let the wetlands permit process be the fail-safe that it's supposed to be.
Have you done any kind of investigation in the structure?
I have not done the investigation on the structure, no.
Okay. Obviously, you'll intend to.
Well, yeah, if you want to do
Sure.
a protocol, absolutely, we'll turn to it. Pam Pospisil, who's the project architect, she's done evaluation of the building. She hasn't, started taking things apart or whatnot to see if there's, insect damage or if there's rot or the things like that. There is, just from a cursory review of the building, there's none of that. There's no rot on any of the trim. There's no kinds of things that you would typically see. Doors misaligning, windows misaligning, trim coming off in areas of the roof or the eaves starting to bow or dip, those kinds of things that you would
Right.
typically see. So, you don't have to do an exhaustive investigation into the building to see whether or not it's in decent shape, and this building is in decent shape.
I have an issue with finishing the basement.
Yeah.
I do. I just think it's 3 levels of living space is aggressive for the size lot. I do. That's all. That's just my opinion.
Any other, excuse me, any other questions from the table before I open it up to the public?
And the basement is not a full basement. It's only a portion of the basement.
Yeah, it's only about, I'll call it a half, but give or take.
And just anecdotally, and I only bring it up because we don't see this that often, the applicant, in their process of trying to right-size the project, did meet with the neighbor and listen to their, I don't want to call them complaints, but suggestions or comments, and change the plan accordingly. And I wish more people did that, so.
And thank you for bringing that up, and that was one of the good things that came out of the ZBA process. And the neighbors did have some viable concerns, some, that were, we felt had more credence than others, but they were all still viable concerns. And they modified the project as best they could to meet those concerns. And I think that, between the changes the applicants made and the changes the ZBA made for the project, I believe it answered all of the concerns of the neighbor. So.
I just had one last question, and forgive me as I'm new to this communication. I just wanted to understand about the deck. So originally in those pictures, it looks like it extended towards the water, and then in the drawings, it looks like am I to understand that it's kind of been reimagined as more narrow?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, the existing deck ranges from 50 feet to 44.6 from the bulkhead. It's
Okay.
got 2 different sections, it steps out.
Right.
So what we've done is we've pulled it back, so the whole deck is just under 50 feet from the wetlands. So it extends further to the side, but doesn't come as far out, it doesn't have that step that
Okay.
comes out toward the bulkhead. Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll open up to questions from the physical audience. Is there anyone on Zoom who has a question or a comment? Okay. So what I'm hearing is that we would like to get those construction protocols. So if we're requesting those, how long do you need to get those back to us?
I'll say 10 days. Give me 10 days. That'll give me enough time so that Pam and I can collaborate on them, make sure they're gonna work. I can get them over to Joe and have him look at them and read. I can't vouch for what their timing would be, but I can get them to them fairly quickly.
All right, so that would be by the 22nd?
Sure, yeah, that sounds good.
So my only concern in adjourning this, February 2nd would be our next town board meeting date, is if whether or not that gives Joe and Reed enough time to look at this, just knowing how busy their schedules are. So I'm thinking we adjourn until February 23rd. What's the board feel about that?
When are we gonna get the papers back from him?
When's the next meeting, I'm sorry?
Today's the
The next one is February 2nd.
22nd.
So if we get them by the the 22nd, that would give them a week and a day to review.
Could we adjourn to the 2nd, and if they're not ready, push it back? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate
At
that.
the end of February is a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
I would support that only because there's a very good chance I will not be here on the 23rd. So
Okay, yeah, it's even better, yeah, okay.
it's my
And if we can get them to them sooner, we absolutely will.
Yes.
Yeah.
February 23rd is my 65th birthday. Feel free to send gifts.
You cannot do that. Don't, you cannot say that.
Just kidding.
What's the gift for 65?
Good answer. All right, so we are adjourning this to February 2nd. Thank you. All right. We will open the public hearing for 85 Shore Road, Bootsy SI Wetlands. Shelby, if you could read the notice.
It's a long one, so. Yes. Okay. Application of Bootsy SI LLC, Michael Ebel, 85 Shore Road, to conduct site grading using approximately 879 cubic yards of soil material obtained from on-site excavations located outside the wetlands regulated area, within the adjacent regulated area, in association with the construction of a proposed 4,654 square foot, two-story dwelling, 5,710 square feet of living area, with 1,219 square feet masonry patio, partially covered by an 877 square foot deck, and a 931 square foot, one-story accessory garage, all located at least 100 feet from wetlands and outside the wetlands regulated area, and an 864 square foot infinity edge saltwater filtration swimming pool and spa with attached spillway, 100 square feet of which is located within the adjacent regulated area, located 97 feet from wetlands. Install 4-foot-high pool enclosure fencing with gates, install new drinking water well, and IA sanitary system and stormwater drainage systems outside wetlands regulated area, install new permeable gravel driveway and associated retaining walls outside wetlands regulated area, and establish and perpetually maintain with native plantings a minimum 25-foot wide, approximately 24,258 square foot vegetated buffer adjacent to the freshwater wetlands boundary, all as depicted on the site plan prepared by Buttercup Design Group, last dated July 15th, 2025, and architectural plans prepared by James E. Nolan, AGA, LLC, last dated September 17th, 2025.
Thank you. We have reports from CAC, Planning Board, and Teresa Mason, our wetlands consultant. I have the Conservation Advisory Council report in front of me, and they had 3 items: indicate existing utility panels on site plans. That has been taken care of in this recent information we received. Submit spacing and type of native plantings. We received that. And utilize existing exception, and that was for the 100 square foot in the pool, which has been modified as well. But with those 3 suggestions, they voted to approve 6-0. Okay, do you want to do the planning board?
Yeah, I do have some. Some of their comments were that they appreciated that there was no expansion in the vegetative buffer, and the expansion in the adjacent regulated area was minimal. Because of the steep slope of the property, they did have concerns about runoff and heavy rains. So an increase in the vegetative buffer and ensuring that there is appropriate dry wells and roof cover was a recommendation of theirs. Let's see. Then they reviewed the amended planting proposal and appreciated that the changes that were made and the reduction of the infinity edge of the swimming pool into the encroached area, so now that's pulled back. Let's see. Overall, they ruled in favor of the application.
Teresa, I'll let you give your report.
Good evening, Teresa Mason for the record. I have reviewed the revised project plans and they're generally consistent with our recommendations. I just would like the project plans to be refined just so that the footing and the infinity edge are, more clearly delineated on the revised project plans. And I am also recommending that the final project plans also include the utility lines to the outdoor kitchen. That's water, electric, wastewater, because those aren't shown on the revised project plans. And then finally, I do recommend that the Chinese junipers be swapped out for the native eastern red cedars. But those are my three recommendations based on the revised project plans.
Thank you.
What was the first recommendation, sorry?
Utility lines we put on the plan, on the kitchen, the outdoor kitchen.
Was it the infinity pool being removed?
Yeah, so
No,
the infinity pool was revised, but the project plans don't really make clear where the trough and the footing for those for that structure is in relationship to the wetlands boundary. So like a cross section would be really helpful. So that you can see this is where the infinity edge is and the foundation, the footing comes out this far and this is where the wetlands boundary is, even though the exemption may be applicable here, just so it's clear and on the record.
Thank you. For the applicant, we have Mr. Herman.
I feel like I haven't seen you all in a while. So I
State your name for the record.
Rob Herman, Event Consultants, on behalf of the applicant, Vicky Cardero, landscape designer, is also here. Mike Evelyn's wife, the applicants and property owners are also here. I do want to kind of review the project with the board as quickly as I can, but just in quick response to Teresa's comment regarding the pool. As part of the revised site plan, the infinity edge, Teresa, was basically removed and the pool was pulled back to the 100-foot setback. So there is no longer that trough sitting within the 100-foot wetlands regulated area. Now all of the proposed construction is at the 100-foot setback or farther and thus located outside the wetlands regulated area. So that should be clear. That should be clearly visible on the revised site.
Does the footing extend beyond the 100-foot?
No.
The footing should be, it should be clear where the footing extends to, just for the record.
Yeah, I can ask Vicky to respond to that once we finish up here, just in case there's any other questions. So I'm sure you're all aware, and as noted in the planning board's advisory report, this site does have a bit of a history with the town board. It was the site of the former Herman Castle, no relation. We've heard that before. In both 2013 and 2016, the town board issued a wetlands permit for the demolition of the so-called castle and construction of a new dwelling and associated structures, which, unlike the currently proposed dwelling and associated structures, encroached into the wetlands regulated area. There was over a 7,000 square foot footprint house, 75 feet from wetlands, a nearly 1,500 square foot pool, 76 feet from the wetlands boundary, and a nearly 6,000 square foot patio, 75 feet from the wetlands boundary. So relative to the proposal before you tonight, not only are the proposed house footprint, swimming pool, and patio 50 to 70% smaller in size than what the board approved done years ago, as I just noted to Teresa, the entirety of the currently proposed structures are located physically outside the 100-foot wetlands regulated area and thus not physically located within the jurisdictional purview of Chapter 129. This is something critical to keep in mind because when this application was originally submitted, as just discussed with Teresa, 100 square foot of the proposed swimming pool was in fact situated within the 100-foot wetland setback. It was set back 97 feet. That design was based on the concept that its 100 square foot encroachment was equal to the 100 square foot exemption, which would then effectively have been used up. Al, I think you were at the CAC meeting when we talked about that. But after both Teresa and the planning board expressed reservations about what they believe should be
considered an avoidable encroachment. The applicants did proactively agree to modify the proposed design to in fact do what the planning board was pressing us to do, which was to relocate the pool farther back outside the wetland regulated area in order to eliminate that encroachment altogether. And that was depicted on a revised site plan that was submitted to the town clerk on or about December 12th. So that left only the associated site disturbance, regrading, et cetera, and the proposed buffer plantings within the wetlands regulated area. And all such site disturbance is restricted to the adjacent regulated area. That's the 75 to 100-foot wetland setback. There is no site activity proposed within the 75-foot vegetative buffer except for those mitigated buffer plantings and the proposed drinking water well, which has to be located there for health department related reasons of septic separation, and technically a drinking water well does not require a wetlands permit. So there's no non-compliance there. The current site plan, I believe it's fair to say, is this one I believe the town board would very much like to have received in 2016. It's also worth noting for the record, as it was in 2016, that the wetland area that gives the town wetlands jurisdiction over the property is a freshwater pond located on the property, which has a history of artificial manipulation that has been documented by varying footprints of the pond shown on the original map of West Neck Park from 1888 and Suffolk County aerial images from 1962 and 1978. That pond has many, many years ago been made smaller, partially filled, resized, etc. And it is likely for that reason that the pond was never mapped, despite its size, as a New York State DEC state-regulated freshwater wetland. Even after an updated jurisdictional determination request was submitted last year to the DEC due to the state's expanded jurisdictional regulations that they adopted on January 1st of 2025, the DEC again declined to regulate the pond as a regulated wetland pursuant to a no jurisdiction determination that was issued in June of last year. Nevertheless, as evidenced by the initial design and the subsequent changes made in response to Teresa's and the planning board's concern, the applicant has approached the site with serious deference to protection of the wetland, now keeping all proposed construction outside the wetlands regulated area, limiting associated grading activities to the adjacent regulated area and outside the 75-foot vegetative buffer, and proposing the over 12,000 square foot non-disturbance buffer adjacent to the pond, which is to be planted with native vegetation, leaving existing trees and other existing vegetation within the buffer undisturbed. I should also note that in addition to relocation of the swimming pool, the revised site plan that was submitted last month also addressed various other questions and requests from the board's advisory committees, as was outlined in my letter dated December 11th. Quickly, a plan sheet with a pool profile was added to demonstrate that the pool that is now located outside wetlands jurisdiction is elevated well above the water table. The location of the existing panel, as Amber mentioned, was added. A note was added to indicate that aside from the proposed well and associated water line, there would be no utilities, including a generator or solar battery, proposed within the 100-foot wetlands regulated area. On that note, I think one of Teresa's suggestions tonight was to show utilities between the house and the kitchen, and that really should not be of concern to this board. Those utilities would be located entirely outside the wetlands regulated area, and a note is now added on the site plan that says there shall be no utilities installed within the wetlands regulated area. That said, if that's something the town board insists we add, I don't think it would be difficult to add that. A note was added to the proposed buffer referencing the plantings plan for specific details. And there had been a request that the second floor decks cantilever off the house be added. Again, those are not items within the purview of this application, but those were added to the revised site plan. Finally, in response to a planning board report that was dated December 17th, which we received after our December 12th resubmission, We have brought with us tonight an updated comprehensive plantings plan that includes the proposed landscape design and plantings, not just for the non-disturbance buffer, also for the rest of the site and the wetlands regulated area in particular, noting trees and other vegetation to remain. I don't think that was something that Teresa had asked for outside the planning's plan we submitted a month ago, but it was something that the planning board continued to ask for because they just wanted to see that there was going to be attention paid to revegetation of the entire site comprehensively and not just a buffer. So I can hand Shelby a bunch of copies of those. Just for the record, I submitted a cover letter with that also just responds to a couple of other items that were in that planning board report. They mentioned a prior covenant stipulating the capacity of any drinking water well on this property should be limited to a maximum 1 horsepower, flow rate of 24 gallons per minute. Attached to my letter is a letter from Michael Drake, PE, who's the engineer that obtained a health department permit, confirms that those specifications would comply with the approval issued by the health department. With respect to the stormwater drainage concerns expressed in the planning board report, Mr. Drake's letter also confirms that the proposed stormwater drainage system has been designed to capture 2-inch rainfalls required by the town of Shelter Island. And I noted that we trusted that the applicant would be advised, I assume by the building department or the town engineer, if a more expansive stormwater drainage system was required, or if that was something that the town board asked for. And finally, just for the record, the planning board report references a determination that the application would be referred to the ZBA due to questions by the building inspector. I think Reed may have already clarified that with you. That was since resolved by changing the architectural design, and there is no reason for including the ZBA based on what it's saying. That's all I have. If the board has any questions, I'm happy to respond. And again, Vicky, do you want to speak just to the pool? I think Teresa's just asking, she wants to make sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, that the entirety of the pool construction will be located physically outside.
It's typically integrated with the coping line, so it should
Thank you.
be.
If you could just come
Yeah,
up to
just step up and.
state your name for the record, please. Thank you.
Vicky Cordero. It's typically integrated with the pool coping, so it's usually 12 inches behind the edge of the interior edge of the pool. So if we're on the line, it should be fine.
And that's how it's depicted on the site plan. But again, as with the electrical lines, if you need a supplemental drawing, I don't think that would be an issue.
I have a question, 2 questions actually.
Sure.
The existing masonry garage storage building, that's a dry building, right? It's going to remain dry?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
not-
right now, there,
It's just,
yeah,
okay.
a conscious decision was made not to address that building as part of this application.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there
I get
any,
that.
It serves as storage, so
Yeah.
I think part of the idea is that it would be helpful to contain some construction materials instead of leaving them out on site and in view, et cetera.
so no renovation work will happen there?
That's correct. And if any renovation work were proposed, obviously there's an understanding the owner would have to come back and deal with that as a separate approval and approval.
And just the other thing is access to the site is a dirt road. So just be aware that at some point that might need to get repaired because it's a rough ride right now as it is. So there may need to be like just some coordination with the neighbors to try to figure out how to handle that.
Understood.
I do have a question actually for Teresa.
Sure.
Sorry. Teresa, you had requested or suggested replacing the existing June Terrace Chinensis that is on just above, on the property line on Shore Road, to replace it with Eastern Red Cedar. So that's a very long stretch, and I don't know who planted those, if it was Herman. You know, the property's been fallow for, I'm gonna guess 20, 25 years, I don't know. I've been here since '89, and I've never known, it's been abandoned since I've been here. But the junipers on the rows, if we replace it with eastern red cedars, that's deer food, as you know. So the deer will eat them, and that will then get rid of the privacy factor from people on Shore Road looking at that. So do you still advocate for changing this to I have eastern red cedars on the planting, like 5 or 6 on the west side of the property, just for a little bit of privacy. We can control that easily with spraying and in winter deer fencing, because it's just minimal, it's 5 trees. But on the road, that's, I don't know, what is that, 300 linear feet or something, and it's existing and the deer don't eat it. Do you still advocate for switching all that material out?
No. There was a couple of places within that existing area that there were some trees that were going to be replaced, and in those areas, that's where I had recommended it. I mean, obviously, everything is deer food; they nibble on everything. But eastern red cedars are adapted here, and they'll nibble on the bottoms, and then they'll grow up, and then they'll stop nibbling on them. But it's for the ones that were to be replaced, as shown on the planting plans. There's like 4 or 5 of them, like right near the fence.
Okay, yes, I was just extending, because right now, let's say there's 50 junipers there on the road.
No,
to the left.
Just the new ones.
Sorry?
Just the new ones.
Just the new ones, got it.
Yep.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm froggy today, but I mean, this is down to the excavation and regrading. So I was just wondering if you could explain or show on the plans where that excavation and regrading is going to take place.
Do you want to walk them through that from your plan?
For the house, the excavation
Yeah,
for the
in
house?
other-
Yeah, just where the excavation.
Dash lines that show the regrading. It's not much to it.
It's already been, it's already been
Yeah.
altered when it was developed with the
Yes.
castle.
Yeah.
Um,
I think what they're asking is just to make clear, basically, just walk through. It's really just these blue
it's just the
lines.
dashed blue lines,
Yeah.
that north of the pool. You see the blue lines dashed. That's the area. And you see, it's that a project limiting fence.
The lighter blue one? The
Yes,
turquoisey
light
one?
blue, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the planning board comments was just the amount of excavation and the fact that it was, let me just find it here, the equivalent of 144 dump trucks to move that. It just, that seemed like a large calculation.
Yeah, I actually was a little bit confused by that comment, because what we're trying to explain in the project description is the material from the on-site excavation that's going to be retained for the proposed grading. And the planning board comment makes it sound as if we're trucking in that fill.
Or trucking it
Trucking
out.
it out.
Working, yeah.
Oh, the question is about trucking it out. Okay, well, we don't have much choice. I mean, unless we're going to retain it on site and significantly change the grades, but I wasn't sure there was a desire for that to happen. So, okay, thank you, because I didn't, yeah, I didn't interpret that correctly. Yeah, so I guess what they're saying is, of the 2,000 or whatever cubic yards that are being excavated, if we're retaining roughly 900, then the rest is going to be dump trucked out. Yeah, I don't know any good way to.
So, but it would be 140 feet dump.
Yeah, I mean, I can't
Yeah.
vouch for the accuracy of their dump truck equation, but one way or the other, they would have to get the material out.
Yes.
And of course, some rough approximations.
I mean, if it is being trucked out, that amount of material is going to affect the road.
Right, that's,
So,
and
Right,
that's a dirt road there.
So that's tying into your original comment about the dirt
Excuse
road.
me, can I just?
Yeah, Mike, do you have a way to deal with that?
The road is actually not a dirt road, it's half paved, and it's all broken up. And then there's a portion when it gets to my house where it turns to gravel, I guess. But there's plenty of pavement on it, and it's just broken. So I don't know what you would consider that.
Yeah, well, I guess they just want to know how you're getting, they want to make sure that when the project is complete, that road is not left in a trashed condition. Obviously, it's not in your interest to leave it.
No, of course, I'm just asking what is considered dirt road, what's
Oh,
considered paved?
Well, it's
I don't know the
it's not a
answer.
well-maintained.
It's kind of a hot mess road. I mean,
Totally.
yes.
Before we.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a hot mess for years.
Yes.
So I would love it to be fixed and I'll help fix it. I just, but it's already broken, I guess is wrong.
Yeah, we just don't want further degradation.
Right.
That was the concern.
Okay.
I guess the suggestion is maybe just get together with your neighbors and see what they think and try to make a plan to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have any objection to that?
No, not at all.
Because it's a private road, isn't it?
Yeah,
Down that end.
Rocky Point Avenue.
You're talking about Rocky Point, correct?
Yes, Rocky
Yes.
Point, yeah.
Private road.
It's tough to get in and out for sure.
Yeah,
That's all.
I think there's a drop off there.
Yeah.
Chitty bang bang idea. Any other questions from, Teresa?
I just wanted to note that actually removing the excavated soil from the site is actually better than trying to reuse it all on site because you would significantly alter the existing grades. You would increase the runoff coefficient and increase more runoff into the wetlands. So yes, regrading portions of it on the site as the applicant is proposing is, going to happen, but using all of that material on site would be detrimental to the wetlands there. So I understand the planning board's concerns about how many truckloads are being removed off. But if you were to try and reallocate that along the property, you would have a lot more grading and a lot more extension into the wetlands and, towards the wetlands into the vegetated buffer perhaps. So I would support removal of most of that material off-site consistent with the plan that's being proposed.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? No. Anyone in the physical audience with a question or comment? Anyone on Zoom? Don't have any notes about reason to adjourn, so we can close this. Make a motion to close the hearing. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will now open the public hearing for 31B Dickerson Drive, Wasowski Coleman Wetlands application. If you could read that for us.
On the application of Merrill Rosofsky and Stuart Coleman, 31B Dickerson Drive, to demolish and remove from existing two-story dwelling a 243 square foot conditioned sunroom and a 16 square foot chimney, and construct 166 square foot first floor renovation/addition with a 14 square foot second floor expansion and a 125 square foot balcony above, in place of a 125 square foot portion of sunroom and 13 square foot portion of chimney, located plus or minus 94 feet from wetlands. Construct a 14 foot by 15 foot screened porch addition located minimal 100 feet from wetlands. Demolish and remove existing 418 square foot deck and 824 square foot pool patio located plus or minus 64 feet from wetlands, and construct 1,491 square foot raised deck with 6 foot by 21.5 foot trellis/roof over and 4 foot by 13 foot staircase located minimum 75 feet from wetlands. Demolish and remove existing 15 foot by 39 foot in-ground swimming pool located plus or minus 72 feet from wetlands, and construct new 14 foot by 42 foot raised saltwater swimming pool with spa and automatic pool cover located plus or minus 72 feet from wetlands. Stone coping located plus or minus 71 feet from wetlands. Remove 85 square foot gazebo and various stairways, retaining walls, and walkways. Remove existing 2,262 square foot asphalt driveway and install new pervious gravel driveway with placement of boulders to stabilize adjacent grade. Construct 5 foot wide ADA compliant ramp between driveway and dwelling, and 4 foot wide ADA compliant ramp between dwelling and existing dock. remove existing conventional septic system and install new IA sanitary system, both located outside the wetlands regulated area. Install stormwater drainage system, truck in approximately 110 cubic yards of clean sand loam fill from an approved upland source to backfill existing pool shell and establish proposed grades adjacent to driveway. And establish a 25-foot wide, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer adjacent to the wetlands boundary, be planted with native grasses, all as depicted on the site plan prepared by East End Architecture dated February 25th, 2025.
We have reports from the Conservation Advisory Council, the Planning Board, and wetlands consultant. I'll start with Conservation Advisory Council. They had 4 comments. The pond should be indicated as Menantic Creek. Submit details of vegetative buffer and planting after construction. I think it's plantings after construction. Silt fence should be extended to include ADA ramp, and then details of ADA ramp with a 7-foot change in elevation. And with those items clarified, they approve 6-0. Meg, do you want to do the planning board?
Yep. So the planning board brings up the covenant on the property, saying that the existing deck is not to be enclosed as living space in the future. So that's something that we will run by legal and get their ruling on how that should be interpreted. Because there's a section of, there's a sunroom that's added. So, yeah. No, it's not a sunroom, I'm sorry. A porch, thank you. And that, they're questioning the validity of that porch because there's a very small section of the existing deck that is covered with that. So that is brought up. And then they had questions about the boardwalks and or the ramps, the ADA, they're being called ADA ramps, but technically they don't have to be ADA. It's private residence. And then, yeah, their recommendations were that the screen porch should be relocated outside of the deck's footprint because of the covenant, so we can have Thomas look into that. And then there were some recommendations on options for maybe moving the ramps. And then, let's see. They approved of the reduction in the building envelope with the kitchen and the dining room expansion. And then for the pool, it says there's considerable expansion of the raised wood deck to the west, extending 16 feet over the currently landscaped area. The pool location is driven in part by the proposed screen porch projecting to the south. For recommendation number 1, if the porch's location is modified, the pool could shift to the north and the deck layout could be rethought to minimize the encroachment. Other site improvements such as the replacement of asphalt with the permeable paving, improving the site's drainage and dry wells, the IA system, the establishment of the no-mow buffer, and the addition of drought-tolerant turf and plants is all, they're all benefits. So in the end, they don't really say if they approve of the application, but I get the impression that they did.
I'll take that.
And they just want more clarification on the no-mow meadow area.
Weren't they also trying to get clarification or a redesign of the ramps?
Yeah, but I think that's addressed in the new submission that we received. And I didn't quite understand what they were asking for. What they were asking for actually seemed to add more ramp in the buffer, so
I'll get to it.
yeah, I'll let you handle that. So,
Explain that to us.
I will.
yeah. Teresa, if you'd like to give your report?
I reviewed the revised plans that were submitted today, and they're generally consistent with my project, my advisory report. So at this point, I would recommend approval. I would just maybe have the town engineer look at the ramp to make sure that it's generally ADA compliant, because there are some slopes that should be addressed. There's certain angles and slope that need to be achieved in order to be ADA compliant. So I would just have him take a quick look at it to make sure.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted you to know that Merrill and Stewart are listening attentively, but our faces cannot be seen. So thank you very much.
That's the owners.
Yes, yes. And actually, when you first came on, I did turn your video off, so you should be able to turn it back on if you wish to speak.
And it says unable to start video, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
As long as you can hear me, there is a
Yes.
sense of omnipresence that isn't achieved when you can see me.
I can see his face.
Might be able to do it now. Okay. All right, so, Mr. Herman?
Yes. So Rob Herman, Event Consultants, on behalf of Merrill and Stewart, who you can't see, their design team, Doris and Mary are also here. So as with the prior hearing, I'm going to try to walk everybody through this because smaller property, smaller scope of construction, but somehow a lot more to explain. But I did just want to address the porch question. So just to give some context, as Ben just alluded to the fact you just got some of this stuff very recently. So after receiving all the advisory reports preliminarily, we had discussed in person with the planning board those various comments, but their formal report wasn't actually issued until late last week. So we put together a written response as quickly as we could and submitted them with revised plans. The most significant change, which Teresa's report had originally recommended, an increase in the width of the non-disturbance buffer from 25 to 30 feet, and that change was made. But we also, in my letter dated January 9th, we tried to provide a comprehensive response to all of the different advisory comments. I'm not going to go through all of those now. A lot of it is just some of the items Amber mentioned, that like from the CAC memo, the pond annotation was removed from the plan. The ADA compliant terminology was removed because although the design is guided by Americans with Disabilities Act standards, as a residential structure, it's not required to be compliant, so that a little bit of ambiguity out of that. I offered an opinion about the covenant. I obviously have to defer to Thomas's interpretation. I think for all practical purposes, the one thing I would say about that is that the porch that's in question is proposed outside a wetland regulated area. It was not a subject of Reed Karen's notice of disapproval. It's not a subject of this application. So if the porch were to have to be removed, or moved, I should say, which I don't agree that it needs to be. And just quickly, for council, the reason I say that is because in 2002, the covenant was intended to prohibit the enclosure or roof over of a deck that was located within the wetlands regulated area. And that's why it was the subject of a wetlands permit, and that's why the town board had the legal authority to require that. That deck is now being demolished and removed. It's going to be replaced with a new, differently configured deck. And if the town board sees fit to impose a new covenant with the same condition on the new deck, you could do so. But the area of the deck where the screen porch is was never within the wetlands regulated area. And the currently proposed screen porch is not located within the wetlands regulated area. So we don't understand how that covenant could restrict construction outside the area that the board has legal jurisdiction over. But I'm sure you will figure that out. As a practical matter, again, if we have to make a change to that, it should not be a jurisdictional matter for this board.
Keep going.
Okay.
Just lost power.
Got worried there for a second. So to backtrack, to try to just walk the board through this as quickly as I can. There were these various subcommittee comments and we tried to respond to all of them as much as we could. But so you understand the project, it essentially consists of four primary elements. One is the dwelling renovation, which includes the removal of an existing sunroom on the water side of the house and an adjacent chimney, which would be replaced with a 166 square foot first floor kitchen renovation and an addition with a small second floor expansion and balcony above it, which results in a 28 square foot increase in the footprint of the structure. So that's pretty minimal. Most of that work is really within the existing footprint. What is also essentially an in-place replacement of the existing 15 by 39 swimming pool that was actually constructed pursuant to that same 2002 wetlands permit. It was one of the first wetland permits ever issued in the town of Shelter Island, with a new 14 by 42 saltwater pool that's positioned no closer to Bonanza Creek. Then there's the removal of the 418 square foot deck and 824 square foot masonry patio areas that surround the pool, which are located as close as 64 feet to the wetland boundary, with a new 1,491 square foot raised deck that's located at least 75 feet from the wetland boundary. So there is a landward retreat in terms of the accessory structures related to the pool, which is obviously a positive thing, and I think the planning board report may reflect that. And then there's the construction of the two elevated accessibility walkways or ramps, which we were just quickly discussing, which are designed to provide barrier-free access both from the driveway to the house and then from the house to an existing dock. The project, as shall be read, also calls for the removal of various and cumulatively substantial impervious surface areas from within the wetlands regulated area, including an existing gazebo, various walks and stairs, and over 2,000 square feet of asphalt driveway within the 100-foot wetland setback. So there are net reductions in all ways to the impervious surface area as a result of these proposals. The total on-site impervious surface coverage decreases by 1,902 square feet. The coverage within the 75-foot vegetative buffer is reduced by 972 square feet. And the coverage within the adjacent regulated area between the 75 and 100-foot wetland setbacks goes down by 657 square feet. So there's a total reduction of 1,629 square feet of impervious surface area from the wetlands regulated area currently. For the record, I do want to note a correction to item D3B of our application, where I had stated that the existing pool patio to be removed covers 824 square feet of the vegetative buffer. That should have read 824 square feet within the wetlands regulated area. It's 214 square feet of patio come out from the 75-foot buffer, and another 610 square foot come out from the adjacent regulated area. Additional mitigation measures that are designed to protect and improve the condition of the adjacent wetlands and regulated area described in our application include replacement of the existing conventional septic system with a new IAOWTS sanitary system, installation of a new stormwater drainage system, including dedicated drainage for the swimming pool and outdoor shower, use of a saltwater filtration system and automatic pool cover for the new swimming pool, and as originally proposed, establishment of a non-disturbance buffer adjacent to the wetland boundary to be vegetated with native plants, as well as an additional naturalized habitat landward of the non-disturbance buffer, which would be established with native plantings and walking paths using mowed drought-tolerant grasses. The proposed 25-foot wide non-disturbance buffer as originally proposed would have tripled the size of the 8-foot wide buffer required by the town wetlands permit from 2002. But again, as just mentioned in response to Teresa Mason's recommendation in her November 8th advisory report, the applicants agreed to increase the width of the buffer to 30 feet, which is depicted on the revised site plan that was delivered to the town clerk on Friday. Additionally, in response to recommendations made by the planning board, the site plan was also revised to better describe and quantify this proposed naturalized habitat landward of the non-disturbance buffer. So you will see on the revised site plan that the entirety of the 45-foot wide area between the 30-foot non-disturbance buffer and the 75-foot wetland setback, this is an approximately 12,000 square foot area in addition to the non-disturbance buffer, would be naturalized with native grasses and wildflowers and drought-tolerant grass paths. So this is an area that would not be non-disturbance. It would be an area that could be used, it could be recreated, you can walk through it, you can enjoy it, whatever, but it would be naturalized as opposed to having, a maintained fertilizable lawn. So for all these reasons, we believe the project to be really an excellent one, a testament to which I think was the assistance of the group for the East End, who provided the applicants and their design team with input relative to the proposed landscape restoration areas, and also the absence of objections to the renovations by the board's environmental consultant and advisory committees. Now, just circling back to Meg's question, there were comments and requests from both the CAC and planning board regarding the accessibility ramps. After discussion with the CAC, for example, as I mentioned, we got rid of that ADA compliant labeling for the reasons I just mentioned. And both the CAC and planning board requested detailed structural drawings for the ramps, which were delivered to the revised site plan on Friday. The CAC had asked whether landings should be added to the proposed ramp, but because those would add to the structural footprint and we'd received competing requests from the planning board to make them smaller, we did not make that change. Meg, to the best that I recall and understand it, I think the planning board's concern, I took it more as a aesthetic one. They were talking about, could we come up with a less obtrusive design for the elevated walkway? And the idea, I think, and they acknowledged that maybe if we clarified how substantial this naturalized habitat restoration might be and could demonstrate proposed alternatives were undesirable, that they might not have an objection to it. And I think in their report, they already sort of pulled back on the ramp between the driveway and the house, indicating that if this was designed for barrier-free access, they didn't have an objection. So I think it was a little more focused on the walk that leads to the dock. So in that regard, we interpreted that they were asking that you could perhaps have a continuous walk where you could get from the driveway side of the house down to like a lower set walkway, perhaps on grade, and run that to the dock. And so the design team did go through the exercise of that, but found a couple things. One, doing that doubled the slope of the ramp between the driveway and the house, which was obviously ruled out of hand. And then, as you said, it doubled the amount of structure, elevated or not. And so coming at this more from the perspective of Chapter 129 and wetlands protection and protection of the buffer, the purpose of the elevated walk, and as the board knows in its other capacity of issuing dock permits, is you use an elevated walkway so that light can penetrate beneath it and the plantings can continue to remain viable beneath it. Now that's a federal and state requirements if you're going over wetlands. But the same concept applies here. So if we're going to If the owners are going to invest all this money in planting non-disturbance buffer and a naturalized habitat behind it with all these native plants, you don't want to then preclude them from growing underneath the walkway. So the idea of the elevated walkway is to maintain the viability of what you're planting as part of what really is a very, very substantial landscape, a native naturalized landscape restoration throughout the entire 75-foot buffer. So we don't really want that goal compromised just to bring down the elevation of an accessibility ramp. The dock's already there, the house is already there, the driveway's already there. We're just adding the accessibility features to it. So that was our position on that. But we, as I said, they genuinely did go through the exercise of trying to see if there were a viable alternative there, and really just there was not. Finally, there was also a request for a detailed plantings plan. Those, I think, were also dropped off on Friday with the site plan. And as you know, New York State DEC issued a permit for the project as designed, prior to the expansion of the buffer area. And Health Department permit has been issued for the new IA sanitary system. So again, this really, as the owners can attest, a tremendous amount of time and energy has gone into making this a really, really, really good project. So we hope that the board agrees.
Thank you. I have an additional question about the ramp, and this is a more practical question, so I don't have a problem with them. But I'm assuming they're for accessibility. So on the ramps, on the edging, is there going to be a lip that steps up so that should someone using a wheeled apparatus gain momentum going down a slope, they're not just flying off the edge, but maybe there's a buffer bump, something? Because I couldn't tell from the drawing if there was some.
Yeah, just
I'm Mary Ward. I'm representing the clients for East End Architecture. The accessibility ramp does have quite a high elevation when it comes off the deck, so it will have a railing at that point. And then as it gets closer to grade, there will be that curve that you typically see to keep wheels and walkers from falling off this side. Yes, exactly.
All right, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, do you have any other questions while I'm here? I have to say, I feel honored to be working on this project. You don't often get clients that truly want to do the right thing for a place. And it's been great.
Any questions from the board before I open it up to the public?
No.
I don't. Anyone in the physical audience? I guess. Yes. Exactly. Anyone in the Zoom audience? Okay. I'm hearing if we just have the open question on the 2002 covenant.
Yeah.
So did we close it except for that open question?
Well, there's a possibility of revising if the covenant is applicable, and that's that.
Yes.
But not within the wetlands regulated area.
Okay. I mean,
So it's a building permit question.
Right, so that's what the point I was trying, and you may or may not agree, but my point is that the porch is not actually subject of this permit application. So if the porch had to be pushed back, it's only being pushed back even farther outside jurisdiction. So it shouldn't really be a jurisdictional matter for this board. Like, unless you foresaw making changes within the wetlands regulated area, but I don't think that's the case.
No.
I would just say, maybe give me a chance to look at the covenant in the prior application, and I'd say I can get something like a memo out by the end of next week.
Sure.
And then maybe give you guys a chance to respond to it. And that would leave the record open to the next meeting in case they needed to
I think that's fine.
respond. And then it would just close, close the next meeting.
Yeah, that's February 2nd.
Second.
I do have one minor, I guess, question slash
You want to come
correction.
up, Mayor?
Since you're here. The covenant specifies a deck.
Right.
Versus a deck and stairs. And so the part that is overlapping the deck per se is 28 square feet, not, I think they quoted 56 square feet. So I just wanted to note that for the record.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the screened porch that's at or beyond the 100-foot wetland setback, which Reed omitted from the disapproval notice. So that's the only point I'm trying to make. I'm not trying to make a legal argument to you. I'm just saying for all practical regulatory purposes, the porch is not a subject of this application. So whether it stays, whether it goes, whether it moves, doesn't have anything to do with your decision.
It's outside of
It's outside.
the regular area. And then Teresa did have the one comment about having the town engineer look at revised ramps to ensure ADA compliance, but because it is a residential property, do we want to have him do that?
I don't think that's necessary.
I'm thinking no.
Yeah, if it's not required.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we will adjourn this to February 2nd.
Okay, thanks for hearing us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Stuart saying thank you very much for all the attention you paid to what, at least for me, having never done such a thing, it's extremely complicated. And I'm very grateful for your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, then we will go back into the regular meeting and open it up for any public comments. Bert?
Bert Wade, 9 Ferry Road. So Ben, we spoke, there's, something on the agenda tomorrow about a $2 million bond that you requested to, and found out a little further that you're interested in 2 School Street. Unfortunately, that's going in foreclosure, so you just wanted to have the, ability to put a bid out on it, and I hadn't heard anything about it, so a lot of people and myself were, very surprised to hear, that without much comment or discussion, there was going to be purchase, purchase it. It was encouraging to hear like these applications that came in tonight of these expensive houses, and that we're going to get some really serious tax revenue from them. I'm hoping, they drop a lot of money in these houses and they get assessed at what they really should be assessed at, and they contribute. So, it takes one of my arguments about 2 School Street off the table, that, we're worried about losing that a little bit of tax money, but the 2 million itself sounds like real money to me. Or if you have to purchase it at, say, I don't know, $1.5 million or $1.2 million, whatever, however high you think you have to go. Just thinking of what's the plan, and Ben, we talked, and you said, well, it's for the town needs to have land, and I kind of agree with that, but I think the town needs to think in terms of, municipal functions about, what are those municipal functions? And I think that in the center of town where I live, more concerned with an infrastructure, and just like using money to buy a piece of land and not having a plan to leave it there and putting us in debt kind of takes away, I think, from some of the ideas that we have in the center, and really to build up
and to get affordable housing, to put in a water system that we were talking about a while back, and then if we contribute that further down the road of 114, you could, as the master plan, as it develops, maybe will suggest that affordable housing could be built around that corridor. You already have Cards Cabins on 114, you have King's Cabins, and then down on Manhasset, you have, the A-frames. So within that, water would help, and you have some bigger lots there as well. You've seen what people want to do on smaller lots here. You have some bigger lots, and those could be encouraged through zoning to put in some affordable housing if you went back. So anyway, so back to this purchase, and some of you have changed in the last year or two, but there was a proposal when Jerry was supervisor, and I don't know how far and how much you know about it, but I thought it was pretty well known that Susan and Darren Binder had purchased a piece of property adjacent to Fisk Field, which was the old Charlie Murray place, and with the intention of securing it and offering it to the town. And speaking with Darren and Susan, they said that nobody's approached them in that for that purchase, and they were. And it has a building, a house that's rented right now that someone lives in. It's got a storage building, and it's over twice the acreage of the 2 School Street, which is 3/4 of an acre. And if you look at the GIS, it tells you that it's 1.8 or something. And it's in the center of town, and you don't have to go out to bid. And they were very generous in their offer to the town that they would do it for the cost of the property that they paid and the improvements, as minor as whatever they did, into the property. They've done several things to it. But I believe if you would approach them, I think that's still on the table. And I would encourage you to give them a call if you're interested in something like this for the town. And if you're going into 2 School Street, where which we know, has its own issues in terms of water quality. I mean, regardless, whoever buys it, you need to do certain things there. But, and I don't know, Murray's might have it still within that corridor of high nitrates from, when you're around the center of the school. But, anyway, so that's something that I don't think should be ignored. And I know you're on a time frame and you have a big discussion tomorrow, but I think Darren is up early in the morning. You could give him a call and see if that's still available. And you might be able to purchase it with either the bond or some other way, and think about that in regard to what you want to do with School Street, which I don't know what your plan is to do with it. So tell me, if I'm wrong or, about, if you have a plan, let us know and we'll, I can stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Bert. Anyone on Zoom for public comments? All right, I will entertain a motion to close today's meeting.
I make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. See you at 9 o'clock tomorrow for work session.
Yay.